everybody. Hello, hello. How are you doing? Yeah. Let me turn up. Well, I'm very grateful that you would spend this wet 50 or so minutes with me. Um, Thank you. Michael Lee was so so sweet. So what do you want to talk about? I said, well, the guitar. Seems that's about as much as I can muster. But the nature of this is very much, in all seriousness, for you, whatever you're interested in. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to play a little bit, just to acclimate, and then I can talk a little bit about the instrument and my relationship to it as of late. But if you're up for it, I encourage any questions or anything that brought you here to sit with me. I'm completely available to you. Does that sound good? Okay. Thank you for being here. of you are guitar players? We're all in the same boat. That's all I can tell you. Well, I'm gonna keep my side of this rather brief because I want to hear what brought you here to sit with me for this time. But I started playing guitar because my father played guitar, and I was really quite enamored with it from a young age. And I always saw myself as a blues guitar player, frankly. That's the music I grew up on: T-Bone Walker, Muddy Waters, and B.B. King, all the Kings, Freddie King, Albert King. And as I started on the path of playing guitar, I quickly fell in love with jazz. You know, my guy was always Jim Hall. That's what you want your solos to feel like. Undeniable. Like a sneeze. But I was very fortunate along the way. I grew up in California, and I had a lot of wonderful teachers, and I've been a recipient of tremendous teaching from tremendous teachers in the jazz world, but also in the acoustic music world. I was very young and playing a lot with David Grisman and Bela Fleck and those wonderful musicians. And then simultaneous to all that, as I was going deeper into jazz, but I also had my eye on Indian classical music, and I was able to study that for some time at the Ali Akbar School of Music out in the Bay Area. And I think, look back, and I just feel very blessed. It was a great way to grow up around all this music. And one of the things that I always felt very fortunate about was the fact that the guitar is natively an instrument of the world, you know, much like the drum, much like the voice. We find ourselves in a lot of situations that we might not have any business being in, because we don't play that style of music or we don't have that training, but nonetheless, here we are. So I'm very nerdy about the guitar. I really care about the mechanics of it, and I also don't think any of this has to do with the guitar or how to play it. I think there's other things that are happening with live music, with communication, with healing, with spiritual growth, and all these other things that are at the core of it. So I paint this picture more or less to give you a backdrop of what I'm open to talking about, which is to say anything and everything, from the most minuscule to the biggest. I'm always fair game. I told you I would tell you a little bit about what I'm working on, or I think that's kind of an interesting place to start. My trio, we were at the Village Vanguard for the last week in New York. A different drummer, Joey Barron on drums and other rhythms. Then we went in the studio and made a record. Who knows when that will be out, but it's made. Jorge Roder and I made a duo record the day after, which was wonderful. So my head's been deep in composition. And trying to write music that challenges me as a player, as a means of getting better and growing. You know, if you want to do it, write a song that asks you to do it. That's kind of where my head's been at. So I'm happy to be on a stage. I'm excited tonight to play a show. That's what I kind of miss doing. I'm going to leave it there, because I could go, you don't need to hear all the stuff I'm really working on guitar. What's on your mind? Anything. Could be about what I just played or what I'm going to play. Yes, sir. That song's called 747. 747. Like the stapler, not the airplane. It's just that melody. You know, that song is, Nels Cline always had a word for songs like that. He called them squibs. Squib, you know, it's like the thing you light for a dynamite. You know? So the intent, it's very notey, it's very busy, and once you're done with it, you're meant to just go start running towards whatever you want to do improvisation. And so in that iteration, it kind of turned into a slow blues of sorts. But it also works as a completely free piece or a very fast swing piece, or really whatever you want. That's kind of the joy of starting with a song like that. But yes, 747. 747. Yeah. say it into the mic, I know.
Sorry.
Go for it.
You have such a command over the time and feel in what you're doing. Because how do you go from playing something that's open and then going back into the field and like having such a command over the time?
Keep the mic for 1 second. Thank you for that question. I just have one question for you. First of all, yes, of course, I'll talk about it. I presume that's something you are working on or do, or what typically do you find challenging about that disparity between the commanding rhythmic world and the more liberated free world? What do you find?
Yes, so I'm a piano player, I'm not a guitar player,
Great.
but I find myself really easy in the open space, and then once I have a groove or feel defined, like if I want to swing or do whatever, I can get there, but like just making it definite is like where I'm struggling to like, I'm gonna go from open time to like, okay, I'm gonna swing, and like making the transition and those transitions between either different grooves or like different feels, and like making it effortless is really
beautifully articulated. Thank you. That helps me a lot. I just want to know a little more about your experience with it. Thank you for the question. Okay, I'll answer. I'll do my best to answer. I'll address it. So he's talking about these two kind of well, they're tremendously sympathetic worlds, playing in time like a swing thing, or it could be any groove. It doesn't matter what the style is. Versus a more open and liberated, kind of freely moving. It could be rubato. It could be whatever word you want to put on it. It's kind of that second category tends to be a more organic way of moving through time. Now, from an educational point of view, I just want to underline something really obvious, which is very typically those are taught by different people. They're the people who are experts in free, and there are people who are experts in time. And growing up, I always felt a little bit frustrated that they were so segregated. And yet, as a young person growing up playing music, you don't feel like you have a lot of power, but you have all the power in the world. It's the truth of it. But so I just kind of would work on time, and I'd say, well, is that swing? No, okay, let me do this differently. And then I'd work on free, and despite both of them maybe getting deeper, I wouldn't say they were ever getting closer together. Just on that trajectory. Go figure. You practice one thing, you get one result. You practice another, you get another result. There's nothing in the contract that says you're going to know how to marry the two or reconcile them in a personal way. Once I moved to New York and I would have been in my 20s, I started playing with musicians who seemed to have a really good sense of that. That marriage you're talking about, and people like John Zorn and people like Nels, or people like, who else? Mark Ribot, or all these people who kind of did it was like, there's no division. And one thing I can tell you that really struck me is that, and you're going to go, oh, duh, I know that, probably. But the first place to investigate is to be suspicious of your thinking, is the way you think about time playing. I started to notice that all my favorite players, when they played in time, they played time like a free musician. Yes, you could take a snapshot of 8 measures they're playing and say, that's pretty close to 8 notes. But if you zoomed out, it was really just a passage. It was like a pace at which they were moving at that point in time. In other words, the whole thing is free. It's never not free. It's never not free. You might give the implication that you're locking into a groove, but even that, if you look at it from a different angle, that's in other words, I started to explode the myth that there's such thing as being in time. And that was really hard for me. Because those are the gods I prayed to. Earl Scruggs. Oh my God, you can't tell me there's not time when you hear Earl Scruggs. But I didn't grow up really that deeply in a bluegrass tradition, and I needed to find my heroes outside of it. Paul Bley, Free as a Bird. Keith Jarrett, Free as a Bird. Ornette, Dewey Redman, Charlie Hayden, and Blackwell. Oh, these people, Albert Eiler, Sonny Rollins, Don Cherry. You say, oh my God, I was kind of praying at the wrong altar, So on a practical level, that's the first thing. When you listen to yourself back and you're playing, I would say, that's at least what I do with myself. Always put on your free goggles and see what it seems like. Now, one of the fun things about playing time, here's the second part to this. By the way, is this cool? This is all right? Okay. I'm here for you, so it needs to be cool for you. One of the things about time is on most instruments, well, listen, I'm in no position to talk about any of the instruments on the guitar. On the guitar, playing fast and playing in time is usually very comfortable, despite your feeling that like this is my big moment of dazzling notes. It functions more as a resting place. It's far more of a tight wire act to play a note, leave a space, listen, play another note. All the players know that, right? Or listeners, you just know that that's where the drama is. So if I kind of mindlessly go into I can check out, because that's the training in a way. It's not a good training. My wife was the first one to point that out. She's like, every time you play fast, you kind of dissociate. I was like, you're 100% right. But, so one thing to check out is when these time moments, when you're going to time playing fast, I would just say start listening back to yourself and go, am I doing this out of fear? Am I doing this at a moment where I'm uncertain and I'm looking for something dazzling? Or does music genuinely need kind of a boost, a surge of information? Once I started thinking about that question and less about the question of how do I marry the two worlds, because I've already said it's all free, then I think it started to make me want to have a little more courage. And at those moments I would want to go for the thing, I would stand still and it would scare the hell out of me. I would do, as Jim Hall used to say, don't just do something, sit there. And you feel every part of your nervous system contract, and then you're past it. Now what do you want to do? So we start looking at those moments of difficulty as maybe opportunities to recalibrate. That's one thing. So far so good. I'll give you one more thing, one more practice. On a very practical note, it can be nice to practice, and this will be nothing new to you, I'm sure, but where in the beat you're placing your lines, right? You have the tempo, you can play at the same tempo, you can play the same tempo but slightly slowed down right behind it, you play a little bit ahead of it. Having some sense of mastery over that, those parameters, will help you have glue to connect to the free thing. In other words, if you're going dugga 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 dugga, if I go to me, that to my ear, that sounds like I'm kind of sitting in a groove. I'm just kind of driving a little. If I have the desire to deviate, it could be helpful for me that I start dropping breadcrumbs towards freedom throughout that. And they can look like, well, they can look anyway, that's the whole point, it's free. But if it was me doing it, you might see something like this. So at the beginning of that chorus, things got a little free. In my mind, I was basically dragging, and then I kind of sped up faster. So I dragged, and then I sped up. So you create these weather systems with verses. Which is great too, but then you're in the business of reconciliation. Yeah, how would you make that feel more genuine in music? If you listen to all the old masters, you'll get a sense of how they touched on freedom without more avant-garde language. Listen to Errol Garner. Listen to Duke Ellington the very few times he actually sang. Listen to Money Jungle, that record. For example. There are ways where these players are starting to just tug at the time. But when you tug at the time, you pull, you push. When you let go, you sound like a slingshot. You get shot into another part of the field. Again, another argument to say that when you're playing in time, you're always dealing with parameters of freedom. So that gives you three kind of outlooks on it. One is it's all free. This last one is start tugging on it and see how if you can get yourself out of control. What was the second one? Maybe it doesn't matter. But the point is that there's nothing noble about playing in time. There's nothing noble about playing free. What matters is your own heart's expression, and do it at any means necessary. You're welcome. Thanks for your question. They're going to come with a microphone for you, is my guess. I'm really sorry. Hello. Hi.
I love your place so much. I wanted to ask you, you were talking about discovering the blues and you consider yourself a blues player. I feel like I've noticed a kind of a block in the thing because I started classical and I was collected my whole life in college with jazz, but never really learned much of the blues, or spent much time in the blues, and I feel a lot of times I just sound like I'm playing scales, over chord changes. And I wanted to ask you, how important is the blues, that blues phase? Because I hear a lot of people, in jazz school telling me, how they started with the blues and, so much foundation was there. So I'm wondering, maybe more melodic ideas come from learning the blues? I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, wow. The blues, what a great question. The first, I want to underline one thing, if I may. The classical tradition of guitar is really unique it's really unique in the sense that you develop these amazing skills and this amazing repertoire, and then the leap, so to call, from what you're talking about into the jazz world. I just want to recognize that it is challenging. I think that's a unique challenge. My history of just teaching and being with other guitar players, it's one of the more, I have tremendous passion for your question. Because how do you do it? I don't know, because I'm not a classical guitar player, but I know that it's different for everybody. Now, I could very easily sit here and say that, oh yeah, man, you have to know the blues, or you have no business playing jazz. And I don't know if that would be really the right thing for me to say, because I don't know you, and I don't know how you play, and also, it's really personal. I respect that teachers often will say exactly what I just said, and I think that's probably for the reasons that follow. I mean, jazz as a whole it's black music. It comes from this tradition, and if you go far enough back, it goes everywhere in the world in one way or another. But it's a deeply rich, grounded, gonna make me cry kind of music, And the blues is no small part of that. In fact, it's everything. And that has to do with the people who made the music, the musicians who made the music, the way the music was shared, the way it's processed. So I would invite you to not fetishize blues as like a series of chords or scale. Blues doesn't mean the blues scale. It has to do with storytelling, communication. And probably the best way to do anything is to fall in love with it. If you're truly in love with anything you do, you're going to learn it, you're going to figure it out. If you're doing it because I say so, don't do anything because I say so. So maybe for you, rather than working on that kind of weird translational issue of the classical guitar to the jazz, I would turn the question around to you to say, is there any blues that you really love? Any recordings that when you hear, you go, oh my God, I just love that. And it's okay if the answer is no, because I'd almost be comforted if the answer is no, because that's probably why you're finding such difficulty.
I feel like those recordings that I listen to, they're very fast and almost bebop language, and I feel like I need to
maybe go a little further back. Have you ever heard Buka White? Listen to Buka White, B-U-K-K-A-Y. Have you spent time listening to Howlin' Wolf? Okay, your day is going to get so much better. Your life is about to get so much better. So in other words, go fall in love. That's all I was saying. Okay. And don't worry about the others. Of course it's hard. It's like, everything's hard if you want it to be. And schools are built on things being told that they're hard. But that one's not hard. When your heart opens up to that music, you're going to go, oh, this is no different than Villalobos. This is no different than Takamizza. This is no different than Fernando Soler. It's all the same. It really is. If you ask me. So don't worry about it. Okay. Thank you. Sure. I can hear you, but he's gonna be so mad that no one else hears
I'm sorry. How do you divide your time on practicing? What would you say is the most important part for you?
Most important part of practicing, wow. I'm giving it some thought. When I was really young, I practiced a lot, you know. I was of the school that you want to practice things so that your teachers never have to give you a hard time about it. You know, if someone says, "Well, you should learn your scales," okay, I'll learn them. All I want to do is play music, so if I have to learn scales, arpeggios, these songs, this thing, whatever, these voicings, I'm going to do it so that we don't ever have to have this conversation. That was kind of my feeling, and I don't know why I was coming from such a fearful place when I look back, but I wanted to play music. I didn't want there to be any barrier. And I would have those lessons where I didn't practice those things, and the lessons went nowhere. Because the teacher said, you got to do the thing I said you're supposed to do. I'm like, yeah, but I want to play. And they're like, well, first, learn how to play, learn where the notes are. So I had a very, very clear sense of, let's get this stuff under wrap, like take care of it so that we can progress. At a certain point, I switched my attention away from practicing so much. And I'd say there's kind of two categories. You're talking about division of time, and I think it's a wonderful question. I think sometimes we're a bit over romantic about having hours and hours and hours of practice. I think practice doesn't. It can be 5 minutes. It could be anything. It could be an hour. It's like whatever your life affords you. I think is a pretty great thing, you know. So I've no feelings that you should be doing more than you're already doing. You probably know what you need to do and what you want to do. It's just either do it or don't. But don't worry about it. Would be my advice. For me, at a certain point, there are these two categories I just referenced. There's kind of things that are perennially good to work on. Things that are, this could be long tones on the guitar. This could be playing free music on the guitar. Something that allows you to attenuate and calibrate to yourself and the instrument. And then there's a category of things that once you know, for the most part, you know them. Once you know where the notes are on the guitar, where they are on the guitar, you know them. You know where the keys are, you know them. You know what I mean? And it's very important not to keep, in my opinion, practicing those things that are knowable. I've had students and friends over the years who are practicing the same things 20 years and that they did, you know, as if they didn't learn the lesson, but they know the lesson. It's just become kind of a comfort zone. Does that make sense? Oh, I can't play on a stage until I've done 10 minutes of warm-up. Is that still true? Are you still 15? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe you need an hour. Maybe you need a week. But things change as we grow, and from a practicing point of view, it drives me nuts when people are stuck in their first 5 years of development. They just keep repeating those 5 years over and over again. Are you willing to consider that you don't need to practice that anymore? Does it terrify you to think that you have nothing, you don't know what to practice? That would be where I would investigate. Maybe stop practicing and start writing songs. So when I say the division of time for me is often a little bit more, but what scares me really? I told you about these 2 record dates, so I had a lot of writing to do. So I wanted to practice, but instead I wrote. And then check this out, I got to a point where I had all these songs, and I knew that I was not going to know how to play them for the records, but I was so comfortable writing, I kept writing more and more and more. And at a certain point, I had to say, I'm in denial. What I need to do is put on a loop pedal or whatever metronome, doesn't matter, and start soloing over these tunes and recording them, and see if I'm free on them. And lo and behold, I was not. I had like 48 hours till the session. It's the first time I'm playing this music I've been writing for months, you know. And the work begins. So it's situational. In other words, I don't think it's again not noble to sit there and do scales and arpeggios because I got praised for it as a little kid. That's not what I want to be doing right now. It would be a little bit inappropriate, I think. Really. Now you talk about division of time. All I can say is if you had one thing to do on a guitar in a given day, I would say play it. Don't practice unless you want to. but you don't get any more points for just practicing. Play a song that you love. Play improvised music. If I were alone with just 5 minutes, I would just sit down and play. Just like I did for you at the beginning, that was my best practice. Now, if you haven't done this before, I'll say one point. Have you ever played one song for an hour straight without stopping by yourself? Have you ever done that? Okay, what shows up usually? I'll repeat what you say so you don't have to wait up the moment. One song, one solo by yourself. What happens?
It becomes part of you.
Okay, do you notice anything differently at minute 30, let's say, than minute 1?
Muscular maybe?
Okay.
Comes out.
Muscular comes out. Do you ever run out of ideas?
Of course.
Okay,
I do.
I do too. When does that usually happen?
I don't know.
Earlier on? Later on?
Oh, later on.
Later on. For me, it's earlier. When you run out, what do you do? What do you start doing? What happens when you're playing? What do you notice? What shows up? Do you play differently? Do you say, oh, I hope this is over soon, so I'm out of all my stuff? What do you do?
But sometimes I just leave it.
You leave it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a human being, and that's a very sensible thing to do. I think I've been playing this long enough. I've done my job. And for someone like you, who I imagine is incredibly knowledgeable about all of the things you can do on an instrument like the guitar, I would advise you to consider the endurance aspect. If you're able to get to 45 minutes, play a song for an hour, play it for an hour and a half, what I'm hoping will happen is you'll get tired. You'll kind of fatigue in a way. Not physically. If something hurts, don't do that. My guess is that you'll start to use your ears differently. You'll make decisions differently. You'll say, God damn it, why did Julian tell me to do this? And you'll start playing for whatever reason you need to play. Now, if you were like me and you recorded that, I'd be very fascinated to hear what the last 20 minutes of that hour and a half sound like compared to the first 5. You might say, well, once I kind of gave up hope, I started actually slowing down and moving at the speed that I'm comfortable with. Or I started playing the notes that I wanted to play. Or I was in complete freefall panic and I did not know what I actually want to play on the guitar. Anything like that, the worse it is, the better you're set for your next month of practicing. Because you're going to investigate what's going on there. You might say, I'd love to play the song, but I don't know how to incorporate double stops. I don't know how to modulate. I don't know how to reharmonize. I don't know how to change the tempo. I don't know how to play counterpoint. So you'll have this book, and there you go. Take it one bite at a time, and you'll have it. Then the division of time is based on experience and not an overlaid plan. Being bad at the guitar is not a crime. Being bad at the guitar won't make your life worse. It's actually wonderful to kind of suck at the guitar but love it. So I don't think being better is going to make anyone here any happier, myself included. But it's important that you focus on what you want to do. Does that sound cool? That's how I do it. I just play until I hit something. I go, now I know what I got to work on. I get it. Takes the talking out of it. Yeah, yes, you would. Right? Yeah, closest in front of the blue conch. Yeah, you.
We have a couple questions about today, just two.
I was wondering how you get yourself out of the songwriting rut, how you push past that.
Okay, sure. Do you want to tell me the second question, or should I just answer that first? I can do it.
Pretty separate, I think.
Then I'll answer your question. Songwriting and rut. How many of you who write songs feel familiar with being a songwriting rut? Yeah, it's a thing. It's totally a thing. My wife, Margaret, she's a wonderful writer, musician. She's got many ways of dealing with this kind of thing that I think are just marvelous. So we talked about it a lot. And for the sake of time, I'll be somewhat concise. The first thing is that it's very normal, and it's really understandable that you might be hitting your head against the wall. It's easy to romanticize writers as being people who can just make anything great, and I've had that fantasy about some of my favorite writers. I remember Chick Corea is one of those for me, and I was like, Chick can do no wrong. And I remember I asked him many, many years ago a very similar question. I would have been, 17 years old, and I asked him your question, and he said, well. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you have to notice that when you write a song, that there's a lot of ways that you could write that song. So there's the version that's concise, there's a version that's long, there's maybe a version that's slow. Maybe there's a version that's fast. It might make sense to the blues. It might make sense not on the guitar at all, right? And I remember him saying that thing. Yeah. I'm so like it's hard because I have to pick one and I don't know what to do. And he said, no, you got it all wrong. If there's 8 ways to write a song, you write 8 different songs. They can all be named the same thing. And it blew my mind because I never thought I had permission to do that. So maybe I had, so I went home and I took a song that I thought was either a waltz or a ballad. I wrote both. And then his advice was pick your favorite one of the many iterations. You're not trying to write the best song in the world, you're trying to find the version of the song that you most relate to. I thought that took a tremendous amount of pressure off of the situation. And I've done that for many, many years. In other words, take out any notion that this is for an audience or that people will like this, people will like that. You're your only audience, If you don't like it, don't play it or change it. But take your seat at the table of judgment is all I would say. Most songs are held up on the assembly line because of projections about how they'll be received. Oh, they're going to hate it, so I can't show it to anyone. Screw everybody else, man. They don't need your song. You need your song. That's one thing. Another thing that was very helpful for me, I was just doing this a few weeks ago with this new book of music. Gabe Kahane, the great songwriter, he taught me. He said, I brought him all these songs for a record I did years ago called World's Fair, which is a solo guitar record. And I was similar to you. I was kind of like, I couldn't tell if I was stuck or I was behind. But neither sounded that successful to me. And I played them for him, and he said, well, what's the point of that song? I said, well, it's what I forget what it was. I said, well, it's like a drop D major song. And he said, well, that's no reason to exist as a song. I thought, well, what else? I guess it's got an AABA form. He's like, again, there's plenty of songs with AABA forms. He told me and I was paying him to give me a hard time. That was I think I paid him. I certainly owe him. He said every song you write needs terms of engagement. That was his phrase. It's fine. Birds know all about this. Terms of engagement basically say it's like a board game. It's like Monopoly or Shoots and Ladders. What are the rules or conditions that the song needs to meet so that you feel like you successfully reconciled some conundrum? That was the whole thing. So he said that song of yours that exists because it's pretty and it's a D major, what are the terms of engagement? I said, well, I guess it reconciles this cross-picky thing with this kind of classical harmony. He said, okay, now we're talking. As long as your song meets the criteria that you've identified, your song is cool and it's worthwhile. I cannot tell you how helpful that was. I just thought it was to be good enough that I stopped working. You'll never be so good that you don't work. And that's how we write. If it was great enough, I wouldn't have any problems with it. No, it'd be a great song and you'd be losing your mind. Human nature stuff. Once I started having in terms of engagement, it was very easy to assess where I was at. Last week I had these songs. I didn't have any terms of engagement, so I didn't know what I was writing. Once I clarified that, I suddenly didn't feel like it was so hard. I knew there was a lot of work to do, but I knew that there was a path. Those are a couple things that might be helpful for you. Of course. Now your second question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a very amateur musician. I've had brief tenure in lessons that never lasted very long. And I was just wondering how important, early on in the musician's journey is very classical or technical education versus just trying to figure it out, which is kind of what I've been trying to do, but I'm not really sure.
You're fine. You're fine. All of us are self-taught. All of us are self-taught. And the sooner you realize that, you realize that teachers are often, this is just my opinion, I realize, I'm aware of that. I just want to make that clear. It's just one person's opinion. Teachers are often mirrors. They reflect, and they also channel information. They come into our lives to teach us things that we need to learn. But by no means is any student that I've ever met sculpted by a teacher into being a great player. I think that's a little bit of a Hollywood notion, Yes, there can be chemistry between a teacher, or, I was blessed to have great teachers, and I was a good student. I wanted to learn, and I was supported by a family that encouraged it. we could afford it, all the things, you know, I mean, these are no small matter in the whole thing. At the same time, I would not say that that you're lacking anything by going at it alone, because you're not alone. You're not alone. Now, if you feel like, and this is a really, really important thing, I want you to remember this in particular. Often, when we go to a teacher, we will come with grievances. We'll say, hey, this is, I need your help with my time, is it good? Or I need your help because this isn't blah, 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 blah. And often what a teacher does, they do one of two things, or one of the things that's very common, is they talk you out of your problem. It's a very comfortable thing to do as a teacher. So your time's fine. What you need to do is start listening to Miles Davis. So, okay, whatever. So you listen to that, you go on your path, 5, 10, 15 years later, you're back at the same point. I don't think my time's very good. You go to another teacher, they say, your time's fine. What you really need to check out is classical music. Okay, great, you know. The truth of the matter is, you're probably right. You probably do have something with your time that you need to sort out. Now, it would be very convenient if a teacher agreed with you and could say, oh, I know exactly, I see what you mean, and let me help you. That's ideally what a great teacher can do. But just because you're not getting the validation from the teacher, which I suspect may be part of this, they might not completely comprehend what you're actually going for, doesn't mean you're off the hook. You need to figure out how to hunt down the source of that. And it's not to go heavy-handed and go, you know, stupid me, I have bad time. Just investigate it. Is it really my time? Is it really that what is it? That'll serve you very well. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. You know, there's a reason you're concerned about that. There are many things I've been talked out of that years later I came back and got back. Damn it, why didn't you just let me get started on this 20 years ago? It's the same thing when I was, you know what I mean? I'm working on the same thing I was when I was 12, and I got distracted. That's one thing, but now let's talk about the inverse very quickly. You will come across teachers who will diagnose you wrong. The most classic one, honestly, is time. People say you have poor time. Well, it's funny, I didn't think I did, but if you say so, of course. And you'll set up out on a mission to do it and appease them and get better, and you may do that, you may not. But at the end of it, often a student never believed they had bad time until that thought was introduced to them. I was convinced I had bad time. I found teachers who agreed that I had bad time. And at some point I realized I had fine time. I was fine. And I started, you know how I figured it out? I realized I started playing like someone who believes they have bad time. I was making all these adjustments. Thank you, Mark, 5 minutes. I could tell I was pushing things and I was monitoring time in a way that only someone who feels like they're in a deficit would. And then I knocked that off, and I sounded great. And you would too. That's kind of my point. So that's where the question of whether formal training or not, it's all cool either way. What really matters is, are you clear on the subject matter? And if you're in your room working on stuff and you're like, I really want to learn from this one person who I respect, and I think they understand what I'm talking about and they could push me, I hope you get a plane ticket and go to them and help you figure it out. Because you're right. They probably do have something you want. It might not be what you expect, but it's probably what you need. Does that help you? So we have just 5 minutes. I'm going to go here because I know you have your hand. Sure. Yeah.
This is not a question.
Okay.
I love the way you play the guitar. I love your music.
Thank you.
And I thank you for making our life more beautiful than it was.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I don't take it lightly. You never know. Yeah, sure. You, oh yeah, sure, yeah. And then later you just give me this.
You mentioned healing. I'm curious if you can share your perspective on guitar and healing.
Well, I think it's music, and music is very healing to me. I think it's what we're all doing here in the rain. You know, here there's a communication that can happen through sound. Sound is invisible, but it's so powerful. You know. And in my life, I feel like I just keep hearing music that speaks to me, heals me one way or another. That's what music does. You know? I think there can be a tendency, especially with the practicing guitars, to feel like we're responsible for making decisions that make us great. Such a good sound. And in my experience, knowing more on the guitar doesn't make you more capable of communicating musically with other people. I can think of many guitar players I love who have different background than I do, that didn't train as much as I did. And I love their music the most, you know. And that's not to say that there's a weird cultural thing that says, you know, it's kind of like ignorance is bliss. There's nothing ignorant about anyone who's on this planet who picks up an instrument and has something to say. I think it's deeply spiritual. I think it's quite sublime and divine, in fact. So I don't, there's nothing uncomplex about a note that hits you at the right time and gets your attention, makes you feel something. It is our job as practicing guitar players, I believe, to get out of the way, do the work so that you can be in service with sound. And if you don't feel that way, that's fine too. It just happens to be that's when I was really little, I was around Carlos Santana for a couple of years. I was around him on a few occasions. And I think I took for granted that he's a healer, you know. I mean, he played guitar, but it wasn't about the guitar really, you know. That's kind of what I'm referring to. So I consider myself part of that tradition where you learn and then you stop, you knock it off and you go play guitar. You know, and I do my best, that's all. And you get your own way all the time. Especially if you're trying to get better. God forbid you ever try to get better at the guitar. Don't do it. I'm torn because everyone has precedent. You, with a good vibe shirt, you had your hand up twice. I just want to acknowledge that. We obviously need more time together.
Thanks, man. Thanks for being here. Just a quick question about composing, either when you're solo guitar, trio, like your latest record without a organ, or how you approach as you're composing.
You know, I write on the guitar mostly. I play. We have a piano, and I play it sometimes, but I'm less fond of. I guess trying to, you know, I'm gonna rephrase it. In the history of guitar music, there's so much richness in orchestration, and often that kind of playing doesn't get. I'm talking about Villalobos or Barrios or Soar or any of the cats. I've always been fascinated with how that complexity can translate to an ensemble without having to concede defeat and go, oh, I'm just a guitar player, I should really be thinking about the piano more. The piano makes no sense to me as an instrument. And yet I understand that I'm in the minority. Writing from a Medeski or keyboard piano, it's all the same notes, so I just try, you know. I'll confess though that I'll write a lot on the guitar. And then ask someone who plays piano, if not Medeski himself, like, can you play this? And I'll hear what it sounds like and go, oh, holy cow, that's not what I intended. Most of the times it's far cooler because he can sustain notes and do things, but I'm not in the harmonically poor state of mind. I think the guitar is the most wild, out of control orchestra there is, and I think it can translate beautifully to just about anything. There's a risk when you write on the guitar of kind of oversimplifying. You know, like, I'll just write a melody and a chord. It's like, you know, that's so cool. There's so much sound and so much stuff. So I try to write a guitar. The other thing I do is I write everything with pencil and paper. And if I don't have a guitar, I'll write a lot of things. I don't have perfect pitch or anything, but I'll write a lot. I'll write what I think looks like a song, and then go back and correct the notes that I thought it was a C, but it was a B flat. You know. And then the other thing I do a lot is I improvise a lot, record it, and then transcribe it. Because that way I get to learn how I play, and then see what that looks like on a piece of paper, and then I hand that piece of paper to the band. And that's kind of, is that at all helpful? We're at time, everybody, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.